And Sonia, let me know as soon as questions pop up from the community on the
Sir.
public hearing so that we can take them up as immediately as possible.
Okay.
Okay, board, we are now live and ready and broadcasting.
Thank you.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Good
Good
morning.
morning. Morning.
Call this meeting to order. This is the regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Canutillo Independent School District. Today is June 23rd, 2020. The time is, I have 10:03 a.m. This meeting is being held by video conference. On March 19th, Governor Greg Abbott granted a request by Attorney General Ken Paxton to temporarily suspend a limited number of open meetings laws to extent necessary to allow telephonic or video conference meetings in response to the coronavirus COVID-19. In accordance with those suspended rules, we certify the following. Notice of this meeting has been posted online for at least 72 hours. Although members of the board are not gathered in a central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance at this meeting by a telephone call and internet access. We are meeting by use of both telephone conference call, online access, and through the use of an email link for questions. If a member of the public submitted written comments in advance, the board president or a member of the administration will read the comments into the record before or during the board's consideration of that item. If you would like to provide comment on a future meeting conducted by video conference or telephone call, please follow instructions on the meeting notice. All other meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. An audio recording of this meeting is being made and will be available to the public at a later date. Again, we apologize in advance for any unforeseeable difficulties and ask for your patience as we navigate unprecedented conditions. And if you have any questions about these suspended laws, please call the Office of the Attorney General at 888-672-6787 or by email to toma@oag.texas.gov. All right, that takes care of the preliminaries. I hope everybody had a pleasant Father's Day weekend. Sonia, would you please call order? I guess we need to do the Pledge of Allegiance next, please. Let's have Ms. Trout, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, definitely. I pledge allegiance
to
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
All right, thank you, Ms. Trout.
Welcome.
All right, that takes us to the next agenda item. Sonia.
Call roll, Mr. Coronado.
Yes.
Ms. Brigham.
Ms. Brigham did call in, said she would not be available this morning.
Mr. Coronado.
Here.
Mr. Payan.
Here.
Mr. Rodriguez.
Present.
Mrs. Searles.
Here.
Mrs. Trout.
Present.
And Mrs. Iglesias.
She's running late.
All right, Mrs. Iglesias will join us later on in the meeting. We do have a quorum. So that takes us to the next agenda item, to the Canutillo Independent School District Vision and Mission Statements. Mr. Rodriguez and Ms. Searles, would you please read those for us?
Happy to. Armando, which would you like?
It doesn't matter. You could go first on the vision.
Okay. The Canutillo ISD is a premier district preparing tomorrow's best today with innovative, future-focused learning opportunities for every student.
And Mr. Chair, thank you. Our mission is to create rigorous student-centered classrooms which develop future-ready students to compete in a global economy and thrive in a multicultural world.
All right, thank you, Ms. Searles and Mr. Rodriguez. That takes us to the next agenda item, Sonia.
Yes, public hearing regarding adoption of the 2020-2021 budget. And that's Ms. Pekarsky, a public hearing regarding the proposed 2020-21 annual budget. And the public will be invited to make public comment and attend.
All right, thank you, Sonia. Ms. Pekarsky and Ms. Pulley.
Good morning, Board
Good morning.
President Coronado, members of the board, Dr. Galaviz.
Morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Welcome to Budget 2021.
COVID budget 2021.
COVID budget.
I'd just like to kind of frame this conversation. We're all accustomed to a little bit of uncertainty in our budgeting process. As we know, every other year the legislature meets and sometimes they make some adjustments. This last time that they met, there was basically an overhaul of the finance system. And I don't even want to ask Christy if how many times the finance template has changed this year. So normally the first year of the biennium, we're a little bit uncertain as to our finances, but even as of this week, they're still trying to decipher some of the bills that have been were passed in the last legislative session. And the understaffed TEA is still trying to figure out how to implement those. So normally the current year budget serves as a base for next year, and we have a pretty good handle on it by this time of the year. This year we didn't have that. So to add on top of that, we were all just getting used to the idea of ransomware and cybersecurity, and thank you all for taking your training. But to add a little more excitement to the pot, we decided to add a pandemic. So if we go to the budget slides, is PIL sharing? Okay, so next slide. So when this pandemic, before the pandemic started, as Dr. Galaviz just mentioned, we had some budget priorities, and those priorities were worked into the current budget. Next slide. Then as I mentioned, the COVID-19 started, and now there's a bunch of decisions that need to be made in order to determine what next year's budget should look like. However, that information is not yet available. So what you have here is a plan. And I just want to remind everyone that a budget is just that. It's a plan. This is your beginning budget. It's not your final budget. And as decisions are made and more information becomes available, you will be presented with additional budget amendments, just like you're used to seeing on the monthly budget meetings. Okay, next. So I showed you the pre-COVID. So once COVID hit, the priorities changed to safety. Safety became our #1 priority. We're looking at the stakeholders and also the student learning. Next. The budget that you're being presented today is basically based on the current school year and how we ended that year. So we're looking at the current year's students rolled over into their next year's grades. Next. These enrollment projections, you've all seen these before, once again, based on current year students. Next. The tax rate, we all know, we're all familiar with the tax rate and the compression and current guidance. We've been listening into TASA, TASB, and TASBO to see what's going on, and everything is expected to be continue with this compression. Okay. As we stated earlier, TEA is going to actually calculate the tax rate for us, and we will be bringing that to you in September. Next. Again, current guidance is telling us that the decreased revenues due to the compression will be made up by the state, whether it's through the rainy day fund, through delaying our August payment, or whatever means necessary. They're going to make up that difference for our state aid. Next. The property values. The CAD sent us another update since we last met. And once again, the levy is up. They have notified us that they will be sending us an update every 2 weeks until they are certified in July. Next. This is part of the first ratings. We were supposed to discuss the lag. And so I think that everybody understood it. In previous years, we were using prior year property values. Now due to HB3, they're using current year values. And that's why in this current fiscal year, we will not know what our revenues are truly until August, which is way too late for the budgeting, for our budgeting purposes. But they wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the old formula, there was a 1 year lag in our rising property values. So we were getting the benefit of that increase for a year before the state caught up to us and reduced our state revenues based on our increasing property values. But that is no longer in effect. But I just needed to tell you that so we can make sure that we pass this indicator. Next. This is the actual calculation of our tax rate. And once again, it's still an estimate. TEA is going to calculate it and send us that rate in August for your adoption in September. The only difference here from last time is, like I said, the levy has increased. And so we increased our estimation up to 7% increase as opposed to 6%. Which every time we increase the estimated growth, that decreases our tax rate. So our estimated tax rate is 1.029, which will be good news for the taxpayers.
Okay, will decrease.
Yes. Okay, next. This is just a calculation that we go through to try and calculate what the revenues will be for the M&O and the INS. And as previously stated, we normally collect 100%, but we have it budgeted at 95% just in case. Next slide. This is the budget by campus, and with explanations as to why you see the decreases in the campus. And the main reason was that athletics had been moved to its own budget, so it no longer appears in the campus budgets. Next slide. This is just a summary of function 11 expenditures, because of course this is our main concern, is putting money into instructions. And just to explain why there appears to be a decrease, but this is due to the healthcare holiday, which has been included in the budget. Next slide. This is our admin cost ratio, which is a constant struggle. And so we are working with administration to make sure that all of the good functions, function 21 and 41, are not outpacing function 11 instruction and the ones listed on the bottom. We're trying to make sure that we spend all the money in that instruction, library, curriculum guidance area. Next slide. So this is our total. This is not unlike the one you saw before, except that there's been a slight increase in the revenues. as I stated, based on the increase in the property values. So if you notice, FY20 is still estimated to finish on target for our 90 days at 91. And then there will be a slight increase in our unassigned for fiscal 21, in case we need to rely on that money for funding purposes. Next slide. This is just a graphical representation of what we were just talking about. The non-spendable is inventory and food service. The restricted has to do with the designated funds. The committed would be if the board had decided that they wanted to set aside funds for any particular purpose. And then the assigned is the money that administration is rolling forward for projects that were budgeted in the current fiscal year, which didn't get completed, but we're going to finish off expected to finish off in the next fiscal year. Next slide. This is our food service. As we knew, the food service was going to experience a loss in this current year, but the loss was still not great enough to bring them into alignment with where they should be. The maximum fund balance is 90 days for the food service department, and they were already on a spending plan to work on some of the remodeling of some of the cafeterias to bring them down to the correct level. So they experienced a slight decrease this year, but we will still be working on the cafeterias and working to bring that fund balance down. Next slide. Debt service. This is our bond funds to pay for our previous bonds, outstanding bonds. And this fund will always end up at a zero. Any additional funds that are left over after the bond payments are made is used to make an additional payment by Estrada Hinojosa. Next slide. This is basically our budget calendar with that change down at the bottom showing when we will be approving the tax rate. Next slide. This is the allocation by function, showing last year's this year's adopted budget compared to next year's proposed budget, and then the difference by function. And this is what the board will actually be approving. Next slide. Are there any questions?
All right, before we, thank you, Ms. Pekarsky. Before I entertain questions from the board, do we have any public questions that have been submitted, Sonia?
No, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Coronado, we do have 2 call-in listeners. I'm not sure if they are interested. I don't have their names, but I can indicate their last 4 digits of their telephone number and ask them if they would like to make a public comment.
Yeah, if they want to make a public comment, they're
Okay,
so,
for call-in listener, last 4 digits 0947. Would you like to make public comment?
No.
Okay. All right, second caller, last 4 digits 3964. Would you like to make public comment?
I'm on, sir.
Okay, that is all the phone-in callers that we have at the moment.
all right. All right, I'll entertain questions from the board at this time.
Mr. Chair, I do have a question.
Ms. Trout.
Yes, on Ms. Pekarsky, on page number 22, that we were talking about the budget allocation by function. And it says per student, I see a lot of numbers to the last column, the blue one on the edge, that is 5,776, and then another one, number 4. Is this number of students that they take this class only, or can you please help me to understand this, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. What that is the number of estimated students divided into the total cost. So that's basically giving you an idea of how much money is spent on each student.
Oh, okay. For example, in community service, we only have 4 students?
No, ma'am, that would be $4. So if you look up at the top, it says projected enrollment of 6,201.
Okay.
If you divide that number into that 25,450, which is the proposed budget,
Okay.
that is basically telling you that we're spending $4 per student.
Oh, okay. But this is the amount of money. Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
That it, Ms.
Thank
Trout?
you. Thank you so much.
All right. All right. Any other board member wishes to ask any questions on the budget?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Searles?
So I have some questions on the budget, and I also have some comments that I think I need to make on our property taxes. And, well, actually not taxes, our property values. And we received in our Thursday packet a really nice, thank you, Ms. Pekarsky, for putting this in, a very nice, looks like a TASBO PowerPoint presentation. And in there, we've got 2 pages essentially talking about the CAD and what are going to be the CAD, the Central Appraisal District issues for next year. And I think that it's something that I'm not seeing us take into account here, that our appraised values are going to come in later than normal. More value is still under review when the values are certified, and that school districts are going to have more delinquent taxes and lower collection rates than normal. At our El Paso CAD, we've held our residential, as I told you all in, I believe, February. We were holding our residential appraisals at the same for this year, which is what Travis County is also doing and other appraisal boards across the state. But what is happening is there's a new section 11.35 of the Property Tax Code that was for an exemption for properties damaged by a disaster. And essentially, it's under, I guess, the Attorney General denied it originally, and now it's being brought back. 2 different people have brought it back to change the bill to say that COVID is going to be part of this exemption. It's a very hot item. And with that said, in the El Paso CAD, we've already got 900 protests that are going under that tax code change for a disaster equaling COVID-19. And it's only the beginning. There's a real good chance they're going to change that, and our property values are going to be lowered due to that. So I think that I needed to say that, and Ms. Pekarsky, maybe after I'm finished talking, if you could speak to how we're going to address that, or if you know an update on it. And then I wanted to tell you all that we have got right now $229 million worth of property protest to date in our Canutillo School District. And so they're all lawsuits. They're being sued right now for their values. Some of them are our big properties. And Ms. Pekarsky, do you have your calculator available?
I don't have one handy.
maybe you can just these aren't, I'll make it very simple numbers. So if we have, let's just call it $230 million worth of protest, we could take a conservative amount of 25%. Just say the judge is going to allow each of these people to take 25% off of their appraised value. That'd be a quarter of 230 million. And then times that by our tax rate. And if you could give us a number.
Well, Mrs. Searles, what I'd like to say is that what we talked about at the beginning of this presentation is that the state is now using our actual collections. And so what they're looking to do is make up the difference between our collections and what our entitlement should be. So yes, there is a concern, and that's why we're not budgeting 100%. We only budgeted at 94%, but we also took the latest values and reduced them by, I want to say 4%. So we've taken the values and reduced them 4%, and then we've also reduced our collections by.
And you think that'll do the job? Because this is my concern, that we're going to have to refund money. We had to do that about 3 years ago. We had to refund $1 million to the outlet mall. And do you feel the formula you're giving is going to cover the amount of money that we're going to have to refund to these? And it'll probably be starting in 2021. And the ones that are in the $230 million are also going to go into 2022. And these are before, mind you, the ones that I'm looking at are before the COVID issue. 900 new ones are, and they're not particularly in our district. But the amount I gave you, this is before COVID. So have we taken that into account, and have we set aside money that's what I'm getting at? It. There's going to be an amount. And if you just times that tax rate by the 25% off the 230 million, that should be about the amount. Does your calculation come up with that amount that we've got in reserve to pay these?
Well, I don't have those exact figures that you're talking about, but the
well, it's 230 million.
Those dollars would be.
No, that's property value, and that's why I say you take 25% off of 230 million, times it by our tax rate, and you'll come up with dollars.
750.
But
Lori,
those
Lori,
dollars you're talking about.
So the point to this is, are we covering ourselves that next year this time we're going to have enough money to handle this and the possibility of other issues with our property values, because it's very real. And some of these are huge. They're up here at our Walmart, our outlets. These are big money. So I want to make sure that we're considering that this is going to be something we're going to have to deal with next year and the year after.
Okay, so first I'd like to say we hired a law firm, which is Linebarger, and
Exactly.
they make sure that any protests we have get recorded at the state, so that they can make sure that our funding is increased by the amount, any amount that's decreased in our property values.
So you feel secure because you know that didn't happen in like 2013 when we had to give back $1 million to the outlet malls. This is all I want to make sure is that we don't come up short and go, oh my gosh, the general fund is not able to pay that back.
Well,
and that we are in a pickle. I just want to make sure we're good.
We are good, and that's why we have worked to build up the fund balance, because that's where that money has to come out from. That there's always 4 years in play with the central appraisal. So if there is a retroactive lawsuit because several years worth have been protested, then that's where we have to get that money from. The only difference is now, and I can't speak to 2013 as I wasn't here, But the last time we knew that this was coming, we did set aside some funds, but it was fund balance that we set aside.
That's correct, and that's what I'm asking. Do we have enough that next year, this time, you feel we'll be able to cover all of our debt?
I'm sure we'll be able to cover our debt.
Okay. And with that, thank you. I appreciate it.
Right.
Then I've got some more. That was really a statement I needed to make to the board that y'all needed to know that. I have some other questions. We've got local costs that are going to increase next year. The remediation and the instruction for the kids who fell behind, the PPE for the staff and the students, the plexiglass, the bus schedules. Have we got enough? Do you feel secure that all of these new costs are being addressed in our budget?
Well, that's why I've presented this budget to you as a flexible budget. There's always a measure of uncertainty because there are many decisions that still have not been made. There is some help from FEMA. There's also some help from the federal, but not all of that guidance has come forward yet. And so we're still in a waiting pattern to find out exactly what's going to happen. There is flexibility in the budget. There is, I want to say that the first slide shows 240,000 for next year for COVID related expenses. We are most of that this year.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Searles. Do I have any questions from any other members?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Trout.
if there's no more questions from my colleagues, board members, I would like to move to approve the budget adoption for fiscal year 2020, 2021.
All right, and you're doing that by fund and function, is that correct?
Yes, there is a slide. If we go to the next slide.
Okay.
Second that.
Let me go ahead and read then item B into the record, Ms. Pekarsky. Is that correct? So we can actually have that motion to adopt?
Let's just make sure that no other board members got any questions.
For this.
Anybody else have any comments? All right, the only comment I have with respect to this is that these items that Ms. Searles brought up, we did discuss at the last meeting with regards to the budget. And additionally, if you notice, everybody, we have 98 days in our fund balance. We're, at the that we're required to have the 90 days. 8 days would be 1.3 million. So we have 1.3 million to cover contingencies apart from the 4%. If, as Ms. Searles is saying, that the judges would allow about 25% of the contested values of the 220-some million that are currently under protest, that 1.3 million would probably more than cover it. The way I see it is a 5%, 5.2% if it's at 25% that they reduce it by. I doubt that all of them would be reduced by 25%, but it's possible. So that's 5.29%. Based on what Ms. McCarthy told us that she's reserved 4% below that, that leaves us with 1.29% that we'd have to cover with fund balance. That we have more than enough to cover it. Apart from that, the collections had also been reduced rate for the year. So if in fact we end up with collections more than that, that would also be supplanting whatever protest there is. All right, anybody have any other comments, questions? Okay.
Oh, I do. I have one more question.
Yes,
Ms. Pekarsky, the band uniforms that we had approved money for, I'm sorry, Mr. Coronado, will they still get them?
Yes, ma'am. That's part of the band and football. Both have been rolled into.
Very good. So they will still get band uniforms?
Yes, ma'am.
And we had security vehicles. Did we come up with a cost on those?
We actually funded 110,000 out of the land sale from Artcraft.
Okay.
And that is also rolling into next year's budget because it did not end up happening this year.
Okay, thank you. That was all. Thank you, Mr. Coronado.
All right, thank you, Ms. Searles. All right, anybody else? All right, hearing no other comment, let's take that, takes us, completed the item on the budget hearing, the public hearing, and will take us to the next agenda item. Sonia.
Yes, sir. Item B, consider approval of adoption of 2020-21 annual budget. And there was a first and a second.
All right, we do have a motion before the board to approve or adopt the 2020-2021 annual budget. Do we have any discussion or any further comments from the board on the motion before the board? All right, hearing none, Sonia, please poll the board.
Yes, Mr. Coronado,
Yes.
Mr. Payan,
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez,
Yes.
Mrs. Searles,
Yes.
Mrs. Trout,
Yes.
motion passes.
All right, thank you, everybody. That's all we will,
Mr. Chairman, can I make a comment?
yes, sir, Mr. Payan.
Mr. Pekarsky,
Thank you very much.
Mr. Superintendent, I really appreciate your preparation for this. It's reassuring to have these things readily available. Thank you very much.
I'd like to thank Ms. Pulley and the Finance Department.
Increases my confidence in you guys. Thank you very much.
I want to thank the Green
Thank
Bay
you, staff.
Packers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dallas Cowboys.
Thank you, Administrator.
Have a nice day, everybody.
Yes, thank
Time
you.
is 10:39.
All right, thank you. We are.
And then for the record, Miss Iglesias got caught up at her appointment.
Oh,
Yes, we are, our thoughts and prayers are with Miss Iglesias, and we hope to see her soon, and hopefully at the next meeting on Thursday. Thank you, everyone.
I have one question. Dr. Galavis, you'll hear from the commissioner today?
Yes, at 2 o'clock, ma'am.
at 2
And
o'clock.
can someone
Let us know.
connect with us maybe tomorrow of, what did he say? Because it's going to,
Yeah.
we're all sitting on the edge wondering what's going to happen, just like
Well,
you are.
I can send you all the link. I mean, we can, but I can send you all the link if y'all want to listen in.
That's
at 2.
probably not
Yes.
going to happen for me.
Will be nice, Dr. Galavis. I would like to have it in my case.
Okay. And then I'll call you tomorrow, Ms. Rose, to let you know what he said.
I appreciate that highly. Thank you very much.
All right, and additionally, Ms. Searles, I'm sure the administration is going to prepare something for us for Thursday anyways for the meeting, because we are going to discuss those issues.
Yes, we are.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
administration.
Thank you. Have a
Bye-bye.
nice day, everyone. Bye.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, board.
Thank you, Ms. Pekarsky. Thank you, Ms. Pulley. Goodbye, Dr. G. Bye, sir.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Mando. Bye. Bye, Sonia.
Mando, smile.